Hollywood often presents a picture-perfect panorama, filled with flashing lights and glittering stars. Yet, behind the scenes, there are tales of intrigue, heartbreak, and scandal that push the boundaries of imagination. One such narrative revolves around Edward Furlong, a young actor who captured the hearts of many in Terminator 2. His meteoric rise was soon complemented by a controversial and intense affair with model Jacqueline Domac. This relationship, fueled by passion and engulfed in secrecy, became a hot topic for tabloids. The whirlwind romance quickly spiraled into chaos, impacting their personal lives and careers in unexpected ways. Legal troubles emerged, creating a web of complications that transformed this once celebrated union into scandalous headlines. As the fervor of their love story faded, whispers of turmoil and setbacks replaced the initial adulation. Exploring the highs and lows of Furlong and Domac's affair reveals a forgotten chapter of Hollywood that lingered long after the cameras stopped rolling. Edward Furlong's life began far from the spotlight that would later define him. Born in Glendale, California in 1977, he was raised by a single mother, Eleanor Tafoya, in a modest, turbulent household. His early years were marked by instability, emotional, financial, and familial. After a fallout within the family, Furlong was placed under the guardianship of his aunt and uncle, Nancy Tafoya and Sean Furlong, a decision that would prove pivotal to his future. In 1990, fate intervened when casting director Molly Finn spotted him outside a Pasadena Boys and Girls Club. Struck by his raw charisma and striking presence, she invited him to audition for a major role in a film that was already generating buzz. That film was James Cameron's Terminator 2: Judgment Day, and Edward, just 13 at the time, was cast as John Connor, a role that would make him an overnight sensation. With no prior acting experience, he quickly found himself thrust into global fame, navigating red carpets and magazine covers, all while still adjusting to adolescence. The transition from a troubled, semi-anonymous youth to a Hollywood star was sudden and jarring, laying the groundwork for a life filled with contradictions, fame and fragility, success and sorrow. While Edward Furlong was captivating audiences on screen, his real life was spiraling into chaos. The fame and fortune that followed Terminator 2 brought not only new opportunities, but also intense pressure and scrutiny. At the heart of this storm was a protracted custody battle that would dominate much of his early teen years. With millions suddenly at stake, his mother, Eleanor, along with his Aunt Nancy and Uncle Sean, entered a bitter legal dispute over who should control his career and earning. The court ultimately assigned a lawyer to act as Edward's legal guardian, adding yet another voice to the already crowded mix of adults vying for influence over the teenager's life. Behind the scenes, Furlong struggled with the pressure of supporting his family, the lack of a stable parental figure, and the constant legal disputes that surrounded him. The environment was anything but nurturing. While fans saw a confident, rebellious figure in the media, behind closed doors, Edward was a young boy coping with isolation, legal manipulation, and emotional neglect. The trauma of growing up under such intense pressure, without the guidance and emotional support most children take for granted, began to sow the seeds for future personal and professional struggle. This unstable foundation would later manifest in destructive behaviors and complex relationships, including the one that would come to define the most controversial chapter of his life, his affair with Jacqueline Domac. At the age of 26, Jacqueline Domac entered Edward Furlong's life almost by accident. But it wouldn't be long before her influence spread throughout every aspect of his world. Initially hired as a stand-in during the long and grueling 6-month shoot for Terminator 2, Domac was there to help with the physical demands of the role. But in the quiet moments between takes, she and Furlong grew close, sharing long stretches of time together, their lives intertwining in ways neither could have anticipated. Domac's calm demeanor and her academic background made her the perfect candidate to help supervise Furlong's schooling. His guardians, already struggling to balance his career with his education, saw in Domac a stabilizing force. She seemed to have an ideal balance of ambition and maturity, and so they entrusted her not only with his education on set, but also with the responsibility of ensuring that he kept up with his studies while away from school. When she returned to UCLA to pursue a teaching credential, the arrangement only deepened. Domac would continue to tutor Furlong, traveling with him on sets, press tours, and even during personal vacations. What began as a professional relationship soon blurred into something more intimate. Their study sessions stretched late into the evening, with shared hotel suites becoming a routine matter of convenience. Gradually, Domac's influence over Furlong grew stronger, her voice often drowning out that of anyone else who might have had a say in his life. Agents, teachers, or even family members, friends, and colleagues began to notice subtle, yet significant, changes in Furlong's behavior. He began to defer to Domac on almost every aspect of his life, from wardrobe choices to answers during interviews. More troubling still, he would visibly bristle if anyone questioned the closeness of their relationship. Though Domac's role in his life seemed at first to be one of maternal guidance, there was an undeniable undercurrent of romantic tension that neither could fully deny. As Furlong's life became increasingly entwined with hers, the controversial nature of their bond became more apparent. What appeared to be a nurturing relationship to some had begun to take on a more complicated, perhaps even dangerous, dynamic. By 1992, the warning signs surrounding Edward Furlong's well-being were clear, yet those who could help him seemed frozen by the excitement of his burgeoning fame. While working on A Home of Our Own, the producers hired a tutor named Domac, aiming to recreate the successful setup that had worked during the filming of Terminator 2. Unfortunately, complications arose. A studio teacher discovered Domac in a compromising situation, play wrestling with Furlong and another young actor. This incident was alarming enough that the teacher was let go immediately. Union regulations strictly prohibited such physical contact between minors and their tutors, raising questions and whispers among those on set. Despite this unsettling occurrence, Edward's guardians appeared mesmerized by his bond with Domac, or perhaps fearful of jeopardizing his emotional stability. They rehired her secretly within a few weeks. The situation escalated with the filming of Brain Scan in 1993, when Domac was renamed a social worker, claiming to focus on Furlong's emotional health. Crew members noted the closeness of their interactions, their shared jokes, and how Domac took charge of handling his communications and appointments. Whenever anyone voiced concerns, they were met with a barrage of justifications. Domac was considered family. Edward required continuity, and the fear of negative publicity loomed over any potential dismissal. In retrospect, these early signals hinted at a troubling power dynamic that would soon disrupt their lives. As Furlong's fame intensified, Domac's influence hardened into near total control. According to sworn statements later filed by his Aunt Nancy, Domac privately bragged about the extent of her power over Furlong, claiming she could make him do anything. She managed his $2,500 per month allowance, chose which scripts reached his bedside, and filtered every phone call from agents, friends, or family. By mid-1993, the 16-year-old had quietly moved into her modest Los Feliz apartment, justifying the living arrangement to reporters as an educational necessity. Insiders, however, revealed a different story, witnessing a teenager paying the rent, financing Domac's education, and showering her with designer gifts, while distancing himself from friends typical for his age. Domac took on the task of shaping Furlong's public image, favoring edgy, rebellious photo shoots that masked his vulnerabilities behind a tough facade of leather jackets and cigarettes. This carefully curated bad boy persona sold magazines, but alienated potential mentors. When concerned relatives suggested he seek therapy, Domac dismissed the notion, arguing that psychologists didn't understand the unique pressures faced by Hollywood kids. The subtle tactics she employed to isolate him included cutting off connections with peers discrediting professionals who could provide support, and rewarding his obedience to her wishes. These methods eerily mirrored grooming patterns identified by child advocacy groups, raising alarms about his well-being. By the time observers understood the depth of Furlong's dependency, her influence felt almost unbreakable. Amid a brewing scandal, January 1994 marked a turning point for Edward Furlong. His guardians, troubled by rumors suggesting a sexual relationship between him and an older woman, filed a statutory rape complaint with the Los Angeles Police Department. California's strict age of consent laws put the situation under scrutiny, leading detectives to interview castmates and tutors. However, the investigation faltered without eyewitness accounts of sexual activity, prompting the police to decline to pursue charges. This decision angered Furlong's family, but only served to strengthen the bond between Edward and his partner. Within weeks, Edward sought legal emancipation, claiming that his guardians were misusing his income and hindering his happiness. The court granted emancipation that summer, giving the 17-year-old authority over his finances and living situation. This change distanced him from his family, while he publicly declared his love for his partner, asserting they wanted only to be together. Unfortunately, emancipation removed the barriers between Edward and his partner's influence. She took charge of his contracts and public engagements, guiding him into situations with older industry figures. Their rebellious stance attracted short-lived tabloid attention, yet quietly damaged Edward's career. Family-oriented studios hesitated to associate with him, mentors narrowed their support, and promising roles vanished. Emancipation, which appeared to offer freedom, instead left Furlong struggling, financially independent yet enmeshed in a relationship criticized for its lack of consent. As Edward Furlong entered his late teens, the secretive nature of his relationship with Jacqueline Domac became increasingly difficult to hide. They began to attract attention not just from fans, but also from the media. No longer whispered about in casting offices or hinted at in gossip columns, their relationship was now splashed across glossy magazine pages and the televisions of millions. Together they started appearing at various red carpet events, where Domac often stood by his side as both an escort and, in some ways, an unofficial spokesperson. This dynamic raised eyebrows, given the age gap and the ambiguous beginnings of their relationship, while Furlong seemed to cling to her presence more than ever. In a prominent 1996 Cosmopolitan interview, he referred to Domac as his rock, saying she was essential for his emotional stability amid the chaos that surrounded his sudden fame. Despite a growing backlash from critics, including child advocacy groups and moral watchdogs, Furlong defended her fervently, stating, "She's the only one who understands me." This only fueled the media frenzy, as they were polarized by the unfolding narrative. While some viewed their story as a tale of unconventional love, others labeled it as a troubling misuse of power. Tabloids were relentless, often pairing their intimate photos with sensational headlines about teen rebellion and forbidden love. This once private affair had transformed into a public spectacle, overshadowing Furlong's burgeoning talent and bringing to light ethical dilemmas that Hollywood was not yet prepared to face. Through the peak years of Edward Furlong's early career, Jacqueline Domac was a constant presence in his life. She took on a significant role in managing his professional affairs, which included reviewing scripts, negotiating schedules, and attending meetings typically held for agents or publicists. Their close partnership coincided with Furlong landing key roles in films like Before and After Pecker and the critically acclaimed American History. X's performance in that movie was widely praised, marking a turning point in his career. However, behind the scenes, some industry insiders expressed concerns regarding Domac's influence, suggesting that her involvement often overshadowed formal representation. They felt that she sometimes directed Edward toward choices that reflected their personal relationship rather than focusing solely on his career growth. By 1998, as both parties faced increasing scrutiny, their relationship began to show signs of strain. At that point, Furlong was 21, and Domac was 34, and they both realized that what had once thrived in secrecy was becoming untenable in the public eye. The announcement of their split was discreet, with both asserting that there had been no inappropriate relationship during Furlong's teenage years. This breakup signified a critical turning point in Furlong's life, granting him more independence, but leaving emotional challenges in its wake. With the shift in their dynamic, the media narrative transitioned from intrigue over their bond to concerns about Furlong's personal struggles and career trajectory. If the breakup was an attempt to move forward, the events of 1999 ensured that neither Domac nor Furlong could leave the past behind. In a shocking and widely publicized lawsuit, Jacqueline Domac accused Edward Furlong of domestic violence, filing claims in Los Angeles Superior Court that painted a disturbing portrait of their relationship's final years. Domac alleged she had endured ongoing emotional abuse, threats, and physical aggression. She demanded $110,000 in damages, asserting that Furlong had not only subjected her to trauma, but had also failed to repay loans and breached verbal agreements tied to their shared life. The lawsuit shattered any remaining illusions of a romantic or protective bond. For the public, it was a grim reversal. The woman once accused of manipulating a young star was now positioning herself as the victim of his violent outbursts. Furlong denied the allegations, and while the case was eventually settled outside of court, the damage was done. Hollywood distanced itself. The media, always hungry for a tragic twist, turned the former teen idol into a cautionary tale. What was once an edgy Hollywood romance had deteriorated into a full-blown scandal, laced with bitterness, betrayal, and the echo of irreversible damage. The fallout from the scandal brought years of emotional turbulence for Edward Furlong. Freed from his controlling relationship with Domac but struggling to find his own identity, he faced a steep decline. As roles in films began to dwindle, Furlong turned more to drugs and alcohol, finding temporary relief from anxiety, depression, and the weight of fading fame. Once a celebrated young actor sharing the screen with heavyweights like Arnold Schwarzenegger and Edward Norton, he now became a tabloid figure, often photographed leaving nightclubs in a disheveled state or appearing bloated and confused in court. In 2001, seeking to address his issues, Furlong entered rehab for the first time due to cocaine and heroin addiction. This month-long stay initiated a cycle of brief recoveries followed by relapses, arrests, and public struggles. Although Domac was out of his life, the initial treatment was reportedly influenced by her through mutual contacts. The scandal served as both a catalyst for his decline and a lasting curse leading to a decade-long battle with his demon. When Hollywood revisited his legacy, it focused less on his early achievements and more on the cautionary tale of a promising talent whose life unraveled due to manipulation, trauma, and an industry that often fails to safeguard its youngest stars. Following the public unraveling of their relationship, Edward Furlong faced the fallout differently than Jacqueline Domac, who later re-emerged as Jackie Day. While she stepped away from Hollywood and sought a fresh start as a wellness advocate and educator, Furlong remained in the spotlight, navigating the complexities of his past. In 2006, he opened up to People magazine, expressing deep regret over their relationship. He admitted his youth had blinded him to the consequences of their bond, saying, "I wish I could erase it." This moment of honesty revealed his painful realization that what he once perceived as love had been entangled in manipulation and imbalance. Over the years, Furlong grappled with the judgment that followed their tumultuous relationship, finding it difficult to break free from the shadows it cast over his life. His public acknowledgement of regret marked the beginning of a long journey toward self-understanding and healing as he sought to redefine his identity far from the past's painful memories. In an effort to rebuild his life and find stability, Edward Furlong married actress Rachel Bella in 2006. The couple soon welcomed a son, giving Edward his first real sense of family since childhood. However, the ghosts of his past refused to let go. Still caught in the grip of addiction, Furlong's struggles with drugs and alcohol intensified during his marriage. What began as a hopeful new beginning unraveled into another sad chapter. Rachel filed for divorce in 2009, citing irreconcilable differences and concerns over his erratic behavior. Court documents revealed a troubling pattern: missed visitations, failed drug tests, and emotional instability. Furlong faced multiple arrests during this period, including charges of domestic battery, violating restraining orders, and heroin possession. Each headline seemed to echo a single theme: unrealized potential consumed by unresolved trauma. His early fame, once a source of pride, now became a weight that dragged his name into the tabloids again and again. Despite occasional attempts at sobriety, the downward spiral persisted. For years, it seemed like Edward Furlong might become another tragic Hollywood statistic, consumed not just by addiction, but by a past he never had the tools to confront or escape. Against the odds, Edward Furlong eventually began to reclaim his life. Following a 2017 arrest and the threat of significant jail time, he finally committed to long-term rehabilitation. This time something shifted within him. He embraced sobriety not as a condition for legal freedom, but as a necessary step toward personal healing. Through therapy, peer support, and an unwavering focus on his son, Furlong started to confront the emotional wreckage left behind by his youth. He spoke openly in interviews about the trauma of childhood fame, the damage done by unchecked relationships, and the lingering pain of estrangement from loved ones. In a 2021 interview, he shared, "I'm just grateful to wake up sober. That's not something I could say for most of my life." Rebuilding bridges with his son became his primary mission. Slowly, the chaotic public figure faded into something more grounded: a man marked by survival, trying to lead an ordinary life after an extraordinary fall. Though Hollywood never fully welcomed him back, Furlong found redemption not on the screen, but in the quiet victories of everyday sobriety. A life lived honestly, if not glamorously. Hollywood often shines a light on its stars, but sometimes neglects the shadows behind the spotlight. Edward Furlong's story, intertwined with that of Jacqueline Domac, reveals a troubling narrative of exploitation and the perils faced by child actors in the industry. Furlong rose to fame as a young boy, becoming a beloved figure in the film world. However, this ascent was marred by vulnerabilities that came with fame, leaving him susceptible to manipulation and control. Domac's role was complex. She served both as a guardian and a romantic interest, blurring the lines between support and dominance. This dynamic reflects a larger issue within Hollywood, where the lack of adequate safeguards for young talent can lead to disastrous outcomes. The system has often failed to provide necessary emotional and mental health resources for those who need them most. The consequences of these shortcomings ripple through the lives of young stars, turning bright futures into cautionary tales. Furlong's experiences illustrate the urgent need for substantial reform in how the film industry protects its youngest members, emphasizing the necessity of clear boundaries and true institutional care. As these stories emerge, they become crucial reminders of the importance of safeguarding young talent against the very forces that should celebrate them. The complexities of Furlong's journey are emblematic of a broader crisis, one that continues to echo in industry practices today. What began as a much-discussed romance between Edward Furlong and Jacqueline Domac reveals serious issues within Hollywood that go beyond mere gossip. This relationship serves as a stark example of how vulnerable young actors can be subtly manipulated and emotionally isolated. All around Furlong were managers, publicists, legal advisors, and others who should have protected him. Yet the environment within the entertainment industry allowed for exploitation to thrive. Mac's access to Furlong was not a coincidence. It was facilitated by a system that enabled an adult woman to engage with a minor on deeply personal and financial levels. Casting directors and film crews stood by, their silence and inaction contributing to an atmosphere where the lines between mentorship and emotional manipulation became dangerously blurred. The ramifications of this incident extend far beyond its scandalous nature, highlighting a troubling pattern of how young talent often lacks genuine protection. The psychological wounds inflicted can last a lifetime, serving as a grim reminder of the industry's negligence. Within the context of the #Me Too movement, the Furlong Domac situation should have raised alarms, yet it ultimately revealed how often the strategies for isolation and exploitation can flourish unchecked in the celebrity world. If there is any lasting value in revisiting the painful narrative surrounding Edward Furlong, it lies in its power to inform and inspire necessary reform. Furlong's journey shows the importance of scrutinizing not just his struggles, but the broader systemic issues that allow exploitation to thrive in the entertainment industry. The legacy of his experience highlights the need for serious conversations about unchecked influence and the role adults play in the lives of minors. Such conversations need to address how secrecy can shield predatory behavior and emphasize a zero-tolerance stance toward adult dominance over child actors. True safeguards in Hollywood call for more than just surface-level regulations. They demand the presence of empowered advocates who prioritize the mental health and welfare of the young talent. Psychological monitoring must be systemic, ensuring that boundaries are respected and consent is explicitly defined. Furthermore, every adult in the orbit of a minor must adhere to strict ethical standards to create a safer environment. This narrative serves as a reminder that exploitation often lacks the loud, clear signs of abuse. Rather, it is frequently disguised as mentorship or obscured through tangled relationships. Awareness campaigns, survivor stories, and proactive policy changes are crucial to fostering a healthier, creative landscape. Hollywood has the potential to be a realm of dreams, but achieving that vision requires concerted efforts to protect those who can't advocate for themselves. This tale illustrates how the bright lights of Hollywood can cast deep shadows. As Furlong and Domac's romance blossomed, it captured the public's imagination, but the reality of their affair was fraught with challenges. Their passionate union, once a source of joy, quickly turned into a complex narrative filled with conflict and heartbreak. Legal issues weighed heavily on them, affecting not just their relationship, but also their careers. The glitzy facade of fame began to crack, revealing the pressures and scrutiny that come with life in the spotlight. Over time, as their affair unraveled, the excitement waned, leaving behind a lingering sense of loss and disillusionment. People often forget that behind the glamour, there are real human stories filled with struggle. The saga of Edward Furlong and Jacqueline Domac serves as a reminder that even in a world of fame, love can lead to unforeseen consequences that resonate long after the scandal